My name is Keira Flanagan, and I'm a criminal justice and political science major. And I did my topic on Desert Storm, specifically the Persian Gulf War from 1990 to 91. Originally, I did my topic on the U.S. war in Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021, but decided that was too large of a war and decided to narrow it down to a smaller battle like Desert Storm, which relates. The Gulf War was a war waged by coalition forces from 35 nations, led by the United States against Iraq in response to Iraq's invasion of the annexation of Kuwait, arising from oil pricing and production disputes. To start off, the U.S. relationship with Iraq was generally stable, but the United States had some concerns. Iraq was an ally of the USSR. Iraq was critical of Israel. Iraq supported several different Islamic terrorist groups. The U.S. did, although, prefer Iraq won the war over Iran. It was believed that the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait were conspiring against Iraq's economy. For some background, Saddam Hussein was the leader of the financial unstable country of Iraq just after the war between Iraq and Iran. Iraq pressured Kuwait and Saudi Arabia to forgive the debts, but they ultimately refused. Iraq attempted to increase the price of oil, but Kuwait refused, promoting a loss of customers. By seizing Kuwait, Iraq could erase all war debts, end the country's economic issues, and gain control of 10% of the world's oil reserves, which would be immense. This leads to the United States objectives in Desert Storm. So, immediate, complete, and unconditional withdrawal of all Iraqi forces from Kuwait, restoration of Kuwait's legitimate government, and security and stability of Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf, while also protection of American citizens abroad. So, Operation Desert Storm, in order to survive the attack from Iraq, Kuwait knew that it would need allies, being it was such a small country, as you can see in the diagram to the right. The US was particularly concerned because a lot of oil was coming from Kuwait and the threat of terrorism was definitely on the rise. In January 1991, the United States, as well as a group of other countries, started Operation Desert Storm, a military mission to recapture Kuwait. More than 500,000 American troops deployed to Saudi Arabia as a part of Operation Desert Shield in case Iraqi troops attacked Saudi Arabia. On January 17, 1991, Operation Desert Shield became Operation Desert Storm, backed by public support after diplomacy failed. Desert Storm became the largest air campaign since the conflict in Southeast Asia. The U.S. and 40 allied nations, including several Arab nations, flew more than 18,000 air deployment missions, more than 116,000 combat air sorties, and dropped 88,500 tons of bombs. Early on the morning of January 17, 1991, the Persian Gulf War began with a massive U.S.-led air offensive known as Operation Desert Storm. The U.S. was accompanied by troops sent by NATO allies as well as Egypt and several other Arab nations. After 42 days of relentless attacks by Allied coalition in the air and on the ground, U.S. President George H.W. Bush declared a ceasefire on February 28th. By that time, most Iraqi forces in Kuwait had either surrendered or fled. After air attacks that lasted for 6 weeks, the group campaign only lasted 100 hours. Iraq tried to split the coalition by launching Scud missiles at Israel, but Israel refrained from responding thanks to its partnership with the United States. Desert Storm saw the first use of the MIM-104C Patriot missile system in combat, where it was used to intercept Scud missiles. It was also the first time that the Air Force used stealth and space system support capabilities against a modern integrated air defense. The MM-104 is a long-range, all-altitude, all-weather air defense system to counter tactical ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and advanced aircraft, and you can see that in the photo on the right. This is a photo of the Patriot missile long-range air defense system. As you can see, it was a lot larger than it seemed, and it was shot out from that vehicle in the photo. In the 25 years since the first Gulf War, it's clear that the lessons learned in the conflict are plentiful and have implications for strategy, technology, training, and how superpower uses forces. The success of Operation Just Cause in Panama provided a model for fast, simple military operations that included an exit strategy. This was completely unlike the experience in Vietnam of fighting an insurgency. The military challenges experienced in the Southeast Asia were driving force behind the effort to build a different kind of army in the decade leading to Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Here we have some photos of the leadership present during Operation Desert Storm. Obviously, President George H.W. Bush and General Colin Powell, as well as General H. Norman Schwarzkopf. Specifically in Operation Desert Storm, Schwarzkopf told the CENTCOM staff to plan a flanking movement in which the U.S. forces would swing far to the west and turn the Iraqi right flank in a classic military envelope. To do this, Schwarzkopf needed more ground forces, which he soon got. The left hook plan depended on air power in several respects. To avoid discovery, Schwarzkopf would not be able to begin his shift in the west until air power had shut off Iraq's surveillance. A substantial part of the force equipment would be moved by the Air Force C-130s, and the flanking attack would not start until the air power did. In the early morning of January 17th local time, Operation Desert Storm began. Results are widely known. By sunrise, Saddam's command and control network no longer existed, and his ability to mount a coherent military response was gone. Schwarzkopf's ground forces were beginning shifting west that evening. The threat from Iraqi's air force was eliminated when the Iraqi aircraft that had not been destroyed outright fled to Iran. Saddam attempted to bring the mother of all battles January 29th, but his attacking tank force was destroyed by air power. After that, the Iraqi army did not again take initiative. The air campaign rolled on for 38 days. According to the first plan, the first strategic sorties, then air defense suppression, and finally strikes of the Iraqi field army. It was parallel warfare, hitting the enemy everywhere at once, making it impossible to adjust or adapt. About 150 target sets were attacked on January 17th. Saddam never recovered. In the first 38 days, air power destroyed 39% of the Iraqi tanks, 32% of armored personnel carriers, and 47% of the artillery. In the aggregate, air power met the goal of 50% attrition of Saddam's ground forces. It was not perfect, but it was the biggest disappointment that Saddam could have felt. And the wipeout of mobile scuds, which came out of hiding to shoot, then hit again, were destroyed. 4 a.m. local time, February 24th, coalition ground forces struck powerfully, especially on the western flank in the Iraqi desert. Airstrikes continued. Within a day, the Iraqis were in general retreat. Following their instructions from Schwarzkopf, though, soldiers and airmen continued to destroy as many enemy tanks as possible so they could not be used in future conflict. In a 45-minute battle on February 27th, the day before the ceasefire, U.S. armor struck a Republican Guard division at Medina Ridge and destroyed 60 Iraqi T-72 tanks. The same day, Republican Guard units escaped as the U.S. Army Corps commander set the Fire Support Coordination Line 2 forward. On February 27th, the Corps commander extended the north and Euphrates in Iraq, far beyond the reach of his artillery. The outcome of the war was obvious, and the White House and Pentagon were getting nervous about the news reports of the so-called turkey shoot on the highway of death. Powell had not wanted the invasion force to escape, but television coverage said it made it look like we engaged in slaughter for slaughter. U.S. forces completed the destruction. John H. Sununu, the White House Chief of Staff, suggested that the ceasefire take effect on 5 a.m., February 28th. Stopping at that precise moment would make it possible to call the conflict the 100-hour war, and Powell agreed. Since 1991 and the end of Desert Storm, technological changes have been immeasurable. Gone are the days of holding a 2x2 GPS box out of the Humvee window to get a triangulation in an attempt to traverse the desert. Soldiers' lives have evolved and based on the number of lessons learned from the war. 3 key lessons came out: define what type of strategy, establish popular support for any conflict, and require all wars to have termination or exit strategy and accompanying means for conflict resolution. The totals for the United States forces were 148 dead and 467 wounded. The coalition allies had 99 dead and 434 wounded. The United States remains in good standing with many of the countries that were involved in the coalition that began with Operation Desert Storm.